In the misty solitude of the Pacific Northwest, Jack Morrison finds solace in breathing new life into forgotten places. His calloused hands, trained through decades of craftsmanship, trace the weathered beams of an abandoned cabin nestled deep in the forest. For 20 years, he's wandered from project to project, letting his work speak the words his heart could never say. The cabin, with its sagging porch and broken windows, calls to him like no other project before. As he begins the restoration, he doesn't know that every nail he drives, every board he replaces, brings him closer to confronting the past he left behind. What happens when the mysterious owner of this cabin turns out to be someone who once knew every secret of his young heart? Dawn broke over the evergreens, painting the morning mist in shades of amber and rose. Jack Morrison's eyes opened at precisely 5:30, just as they had every morning for the past 20 years. No alarm needed. His body knew the rhythm of a craftsman's day. The converted Airstream trailer that served as his mobile home gleamed softly in the early light. Inside, every tool had its place. Every surface served a purpose. Jack's life was a study in careful organization. Even if his path seemed wandering to others, he reached for the wooden box beside his narrow bed. Brazilian rosewood, dovetailed joints he'd cut himself, finished smooth as silk from years of handling. Inside lay his grandfather's brass folding rule, the numbers worn but still legible after nearly 8 decades of use. "Morning, old friend," he murmured, running his thumb along the well-worn edges. The rule had measured more projects than Jack could count, starting with his grandfather's work-building houses for returning Weathwood veterans, then his father's custom furniture business, and now Jack's own meandering career of restoration projects. The morning ritual continued as he heated water for coffee on his small propane stove. While the water boiled, he stepped outside, breathing in the crisp mountain air. His current camping spot overlooked a valley thick with Douglas firs and western red cedars. Somewhere below, hidden in that green expanse, waited the cabin he'd discovered yesterday. Back inside, he poured the hot water through his pour-over coffee setup, one of his few luxuries. The rich aroma filled the small space as he unfolded his workspace, converting the sleeping area into a planning station with practiced efficiency. Jack spread out his initial sketches of the cabin. He'd drawn them from memory last night, but the image was clear in his mind. A craftsman-style structure, probably built in the 1930s, with a deep front porch and exposed rafter tails showing signs of dry rot. The foundation looked solid, though. Whoever had built it knew their business. He opened his leather-bound journal, adding notes beside the sketches. His grandfather had taught him this too. The difference between a carpenter and a craftsman is in the planning. The pages were filled with similar projects, abandoned structures he'd found and restored over the years, each with its own story, its own challenges. The folding rule came out again as he refined his measurements from memory. 8 feet from porch floor to ceiling, 16 feet across the front. Standard dimensions for the era, but something about them tugged at his memory. Jack sipped his coffee, studying the numbers. The cabin itself wasn't remarkable. He'd seen and restored dozens like it. But something about it had called to him. When he'd first glimpsed it through the trees, something beyond the sagging porch and weather-worn siding, he pulled on his work clothes, heavy canvas pants, a well-worn flannel shirt, boots that had seen 1,000 miles of forest trails. The leather tool belt, another inheritance from his grandfather, went on last, its familiar weight settling around his hips like a welcome embrace. "Time to see what stories you're hiding," he said to the sketch of the cabin, folding his grandfather's rule and slipping it into its designated pocket. He gathered his initial survey kit, level, plumb bob, moisture meter, and the digital camera he used to document his projects. The morning fog was just beginning to lift as Jack started down the trail. 20 years of restoring forgotten places had taught him that every building had secrets. Some were structural, hidden damage, makeshift repairs, the accumulated wisdom or mistakes of previous caretakers. Others were more personal, letters tucked into walls, names carved into beams, echoes of lives lived and left behind. He had a feeling this cabin held both kinds. And as he made his way through the awakening forest, Jack couldn't shake the sense that he was walking towards something more than just another restoration project. What he couldn't know, was that with each step he was walking toward his own past, carefully preserved in time like an insect in amber, waiting to be rediscovered. The cabin materialized out of the morning mist like a ship emerging from fog. Jack paused at the tree line, taking in the full view. Morning light filtered through the canopy, casting dappled shadows across the weathered structure. Despite its dilapidated state, the bones of the building spoke of careful craftsmanship. His boots crunched on pine needles as he approached. That's when he saw it, a faded red sign nailed to a nearby tree, "No trespassing private property." The letters were barely legible beneath years of weather and moss, but the message was clear enough. Jack pulled out his phone. No service. As expected, this deep in the forest. He'd have to hike back to his trailer to research property records, but something made him hesitate to leave. The morning light was perfect for a preliminary survey, and he was already here. He circled the structure slowly, professional instincts taking over. The cedar siding had weathered to a soft silver, except where water damage had left dark stains beneath the eaves. The rear gutter had completely separated from the roofline, leaving an ugly scar of rot. His grandfather's folding rule came out as he measured the foundation. The concrete was solid, no major cracks or settling. Whoever had built this place had done their homework. The wooden pier blocks supporting the porch, though, were another story. Two had completely failed, leaving the front steps at a dangerous angle. A fluttering caught his eye. Through a broken window, he glimpsed what looked like curtain fabric moving in the draft, so the place wasn't completely abandoned. He peered through the dusty glass, cupping his hands around his eyes to block the glare. The interior was dim, but he could make out furnished rooms. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, its mantel still standing proud and level. Shapes of furniture huddled beneath dust covers like sleeping ghosts. On the floor, scattered leaves had blown in through the broken window. "Sorry about the intrusion," he murmured, more to himself than the house. Then he saw the footprints in the dust, recent ones, leading to and from the front door. His pulse quickened. Someone had been here within the last few days. The front door was secured with a newer padlock, incongruous against the aged wood. Jack ran his fingers along the doorframe, feeling the solid craftsmanship beneath decades of weathering. The original builder had used mortise and tenon joints, not just simple butt joints. This hadn't been some thrown-together vacation cabin. This had been built to last. He pulled out his camera, documenting the damage. Every project needed a proper record, whether it became his or not. Through the lens, he noticed details he'd missed on first glance. The subtle decorative cuts on the rafter tails, the carefully spaced windows, the river rock foundation that must have been gathered from the creek he'd crossed on his way in. Something glinted in the brush beside the porch. Jack pushed aside some salal to find a small brass key, tarnished but intact. He turned it over in his palm, studying its antique pattern. Not the key to the current padlock. This was older, probably original to the house. "Now what's your story?" he wondered aloud. The key felt heavy with potential in his hand. He should leave it where he found it. He should respect the "no trespassing" sign. He should hike back to his trailer and do proper research before going any further. Instead, he slipped the key into his pocket. The sun had climbed higher, burning off the last of the morning mist. Jack took a final set of photos, then pulled out his notebook. His sketches from memory had been good, but now he could add proper measurements and details. The more he observed, the more his fingers itched to begin work. The cabin wasn't just salvageable, it was special. As he worked, a chickadee landed on the broken porch railing, watching him with bright eyes. "Don't worry," Jack told it. "I'm not here to change this place, just to wake it up a little." The bird tilted its head, as if considering this, then flew off into the forest. Jack watched it go, then returned to his notes. He was already designing repairs in his mind, seeing past the decay to what the cabin could be again. The practical part of his brain told him to walk away. This wasn't his project, wasn't his place to intervene. But something deeper, something that spoke in his grandfather's voice, told him he was exactly where he needed to be. He packed up, his tools slowly, reluctant to leave. The key in his pocket seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment. Tomorrow, he promised himself, tomorrow he'd do the proper research, find the owner, make a legitimate offer to help. But as he headed back up the trail, sketches and measurements safely recorded, Jack knew he'd already made his decision. Sometimes asking forgiveness was better than asking permission. Sometimes you had to trust that doing the right thing would lead to the right outcome. He didn't notice the curtain moving again as he left, didn't see the shadow that passed behind the dusty glass. The cabin held its secrets close, waiting for the right moment to reveal them. The next morning arrived with a light drizzle that beaded on Jack's jacket as he made his way back to the cabin. He'd spent hours the previous evening trying to research property records at the local library's spotty Wi-Fi, but the deed information was frustratingly outdated. The listed owner was a holding company with a P.O. box address. Still, no one had appeared to challenge his presence yesterday. The key rode in his pocket like a permission slip, though he hadn't convinced himself to use it yet. Instead, he focused on the porch, the most immediate safety concern. Jack set up his mobile workstation under a tarp, the soft patter of rain creating a soothing rhythm as he worked. The rotted pier blocks came out first, revealing more of the original craftsmanship. Beneath, he was so absorbed in the task that he almost missed the flash of white in the exposed crawl space. Reaching in, his fingers found paper, a single page, yellowed and stiff, but largely protected from the elements. He pulled it out carefully, brushing away decades of dust. His heart stopped. It was a page torn from a yearbook, dated 1998. The photo showed a teenage couple at what was clearly a high school dance. The boy's face was his own, 20 years younger, arms wrapped around a girl with long dark hair and a brilliant smile. Sarah Chen, his first love, his only real love, if he was being honest with himself. "Well, hell," Jack muttered, sitting back. On his heels, the rain seemed to grow louder, or maybe that was just the rushing in his ears. He hadn't seen Sarah since graduation night, when they'd made all those bright promises about the future. Promises that had crumbled in the face of reality. Her early acceptance to Stanford, his father's sudden illness, the family business teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. He studied the photo, memories flooding back. Sarah had been the smart one, the ambitious one. Class president, debate team captain, already planning her corporate climb before they'd even gotten their diplomas. He'd been the quiet kid who was good with his hands, who found more comfort in wood and tools than textbooks and theories. The page trembled slightly in his grip. Below the photo was a caption he'd forgotten, "Most likely to change the world together." The yearbook committee's idea of a joke, playing off their obvious mismatch. The poor carpenter's son and the daughter of the town's most successful developer. Jack carefully slid the page into his waterproof notebook. Questions tumbled through his mind. Why was this here? What were the odds of finding this specific piece of his past in this random cabin in the middle of nowhere? But he knew better than most. Nothing about old houses was truly random. Every artifact had its story, its reason for being exactly where it was found. The rain drummed steadily on the tarp as he returned to his work, but his movements had lost their earlier certainty. The exposed crawl space seemed to hold more secrets. Now, each shadow potentially concealing another piece of his past. He thought about the key in his pocket, its weight more significant now. The broken windows and weathered siding felt personal suddenly, as if he were looking at wounds on an old friend. His grandfather had taught him that wood remembers. Every mark, every stress, every change becomes part of its grain. People were like that too, Jack supposed. 20 years of wandering hadn't erased the marks Sarah had left on his heart. A pair of wrens had made their nest in the porch eaves, chattering disapprovingly at his intrusion. "Sorry, friends," he told them, "but this place needs help. We all need help sometimes." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of precise measurements and careful demolition. Jack worked methodically, but his mind kept drifting to the yearbook page in his notebook. By noon, he'd removed all the rotted wood and was ready to begin repairs, but something had shifted in his approach. This wasn't just another restoration project anymore. This was archaeology of the heart, each board he removed potentially holding another clue, another memory. The rain finally began to ease as Jack packed up his tools. He stood for a long moment, looking at the cabin through new eyes. Tomorrow he would bring the pressure-treated lumber for the new pier blocks. Tomorrow he would continue the repairs that would give this place a second chance. And maybe, he thought, touching the yearbook page through his notebook cover, that's what this was really about. Second chances. For the cabin, for himself, for memories he'd tried to leave behind. The wrens chirped a farewell as he headed back. Up the trail, their song following him into the misty forest. Sometimes the path forward, Jack reflected, led straight back to the past. The bell above Mackenzie's hardware chimed as Jack pushed open the door, bringing with it the familiar scent of sawdust and metal that all good hardware stores seemed to share. Unlike the big box stores that had taken over in most towns, Mackenzie's still stocked individual nails in bins and cut keys by hand. "Morning," called a voice from behind the counter. "Let me know if you need any, Jack? Jack Morrison?" Jack turned to find Tom Mackenzie staring at him, a half-sorted bin of copper fittings forgotten in his hands. The older man's hair had gone completely white, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. "Mr. Mackenzie," Jack nodded, suddenly feeling 17 again. "Didn't expect you'd remember me." "Remember the kid who custom-built my wife's garden pergola as a senior project?" "Course I do." Tom set down the bin and came around the counter. "Though you're hardly a kid anymore, what brings you back to these parts?" Jack hesitated. "Just passing through, working on a restoration project up in the forest." "Wouldn't happen to be that old Preston cabin, would it?" The question caught Jack off guard. "Preston cabin up past Miller Creek. Craftsman style? Got a stone foundation?" Tom's eyes twinkled. "Not many buildings that age still standing around here. Most folks would have torn it down by now." Jack pulled out his notebook, opened it carefully to avoid disturbing the yearbook. "Page, what can you tell me about it?" Tom moved to the old coffee maker in the corner, poured 2 cups. "Built in 37 by old George Preston, master carpenter. Did a lot of work in these parts back then. Story goes he built it for his daughter as a wedding present, but she ended up moving to California instead. Sat empty most of the time since." Jack accepted the coffee, noting how Tom watched him over the rim of his own cup. "Any idea who owns it now? Officially? Some investment company bought up a lot of land in that area a few years back. Word is they're planning some kind of luxury retreat development." Tom shook his head. "Shame, really. That cabin's got good bones." "That it does," Jack agreed, thinking of the craftsmanship he'd observed. "Need some supplies to shore up the porch. Pressure-treated 6x6s, some galvanized hardware." As Tom helped him gather materials, the old man kept up a steady stream of local history. Jack listened with half an ear until a familiar name caught his attention. Shame about old Mr. Chen's passing last year. Built half the commercial buildings downtown, including this store's addition in '85. His daughter's running the development company now. Doing well from what I hear, though she's got different ideas than her father. Jack's hand tightened on the box of lag bolts he was holding. Sarah Chen. That's right. You would have known her, being in the same class and all." Tom's casual tone couldn't quite hide his studied observation of Jack's reaction. "She's made quite a name for herself in Portland. Comes through now and then, checking on properties." Jack forced his expression to remain neutral as he carried his supplies to the counter. The receipt Tom handed him was old style, handwritten with careful precision. Jack stared at it for a moment, wondering if Sarah's company was the one that owned the cabin. If so, his unauthorized repairs could be more complicated than he'd thought. "Staying around long?" Tom asked as he helped load the lumber into Jack's truck. "Depends on the project," Jack answered truthfully. "Need to get that porch stabilized at least. Safety hazard." Tom nodded sagely. "Well, good to have a Morrison working wood in these parts again. Your grandfather would have been proud." The big comment caught Jack in an unexpected place. "Thanks, Mr. Mackenzie." "Tom," the older man corrected. "And Jack, whatever you're looking for up there, hope you find it." The bell chimed again as Jack left, receipt folded carefully in his pocket. He sat in his truck for a long moment thinking about Sarah, about property rights, about old dreams and new complications. Finally, he started the engine. The lumber rattled in the bed as he headed back toward the forest, toward a cabin that seemed to gather more meaning with each passing day. Behind him, Tom Mackenzie watched through the store window, then reached for his phone. Some news, he figured, was worth passing along. The new lumber sat stacked and ready beside the cabin, but Jack found himself drawn to the interior. He'd been avoiding it, focusing on external repairs, but Tom Mackenzie's revelations about Sarah nagged at him. The key felt heavy in his pocket. Just a quick look, he told himself, fitting the old brass key into the back door lock. It turned with surprising ease, as if it had been waiting for this moment. The door opened with a gentle creak. Dust motes danced in the beam of his flashlight as Jack stepped inside. The air held that distinct stillness of long-abandoned places, not dead, just dormant. His boots left clear prints in the dust as he moved through the rooms. The furniture beneath the dust covers was high quality, solid wood pieces that would clean up beautifully. A grandfather clock stood sentinel in one corner, its pendulum frozen in time. The living room fireplace drew his attention. The stonework was local river rock, each piece carefully chosen and placed. Above it, the mantel was a single piece of old-growth Douglas fir, hand-planed to a silky smoothness that survived decades of neglect. Jack ran his hand along the underside of the mantel, a craftsman's habit of feeling for joins and flaws. His fingers found a carving hidden from casual view, heart-shaped with initials inside. His flashlight beam revealed what his touch had already told him, JM plus SC. "No," he whispered. "That's impossible." But there it was, his own handiwork from 20 years ago. The memory rushed back with stunning clarity, a summer day between junior and senior year when he and Sarah had discovered the abandoned cabin during one of their wandering afternoons. "Our secret place," Sarah had called it, her eyes bright with possibility. They'd spent countless hours here that summer, dreaming up futures, planning adventures. He'd carved their initials while she explored the rooms, spinning tales about how they'd restore it someday. Jack sank onto a dust-covered armchair, mind reeling. No wonder the dimensions had felt familiar. No wonder he'd been drawn to this place. Some part of him had remembered, had recognized home. The beam of his flashlight caught something else, a glint of metal on the stone hearth. He knelt down, brushing away years of ash and dust. A small brass box emerged, its surface tarnished but intact. With trembling fingers he opened it. Inside lay a folded piece of paper and a simple silver ring, the promise ring he'd given Sarah on graduation night. The night everything changed. The paper was a note in Sarah's precise handwriting. "Jack, if you're reading this, you've found your way back. I always knew you would. The cabin remembers, even if we tried to forget. The date at the bottom was from just 6 months ago." Jack sat back against the hearth, the note and ring in his lap. the carved heart above him. The cabin suddenly felt very full of memories, of might-have-beens, of words left unsaid. He remembered that last night with painful clarity. Sarah's early acceptance letter to Stanford, his father's medical bills piling up, the family business failing, their careful plans crumbling under. The weight of reality. "You can come with me," she'd pleaded. "We'll figure it out together." But he'd chosen duty over dreams, staying to help his father save the business. By the time they'd sorted out the bankruptcy and his father's health had stabilized, Sarah was gone. Rising through the corporate world, leaving their small town, dreams far behind, or so he'd thought. Now he stared at the note, at the ring, at the proof that she'd been here recently, that she'd left these breadcrumbs, knowing, hoping, he'd find his way back. Outside, a vehicle door slammed. Jack's head snapped up, heart pounding. Footsteps crunched on gravel, approaching the cabin. He quickly tucked the ring and note into his pocket, but there was nowhere to hide, nowhere to... The front door opened. Afternoon light silhouetted a figure in the doorway, a familiar voice, deeper with authority but still unmistakably hers, cut through 20 years of silence. "I wondered how long it would take you to come inside." Sarah Chen stepped into her family's cabin, looking at the man who'd just discovered their shared past, and smiled. "Welcome home, Jack." The silence stretched between them, heavy with 2 decades of unspoken words. Sarah looked exactly like her corporate headshots, polished, professional, successful, but Jack could still see traces of the girl who dreamed with him in this cabin. "How did you—" he started. "Tom Mackenzie called me," she said, moving further into the room. Her heels clicked on the wooden floor, incongruous against the rustic setting. "Said a familiar face was asking questions about the cabin." A car door slammed outside again. Sarah's expression shifted, subtle but immediate. "That would be Marcus Wheeler," she said, her tone cooling. "My head of development." Right on cue, a man in an expensive suit appeared in the doorway, wielding a leather portfolio, like a shield. His presence seemed to fill the cabin with a different kind of tension. "Ms. Chen, I wasn't expecting to find you." Wheeler trailed off, noticing Jack. "Who authorized construction work on this site?" Sarah held up a hand. "Marcus, this is Jack Morrison. He's a restoration specialist I've been consulting about the property." The lie rolled smoothly off her tongue, but Jack caught the slight tension in her shoulders. He played along, nodding professionally at Wheeler. "The porch structural issues needed immediate attention," he said. "Safety hazard." Wheeler's eyes narrowed. "The entire property is scheduled for demolition next month. The resort plans are still under review," Sarah cut in. "I've decided we need a more thorough assessment of the existing structures. But the board appointed me CEO for a reason, Marcus." Sarah's voice carried the weight of authority. "I'd like to explore all our options." Wheeler's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Of course. However, the investors are expecting an update on Friday. They're quite excited about the resort concept." He pulled architectural renderings from his portfolio, spreading them on a dusty table. Modern glass and steel structures dominated the designs, with the forest reduced to decorative background. "Think of it, Ms. Chen, a luxury wilderness retreat. High-end accommodations, spa facilities, helicopter pad for VIP guests. Your father would have—" "My father," Sarah interrupted, "taught me to consider every angle before making irreversible decisions." She turned to Jack, her expression carefully neutral. How long would a proper restoration take? Jack did some quick mental calculations, studying the cabin with professional eyes. 3 months for basic structural work. 6 for a full historical restoration. "Impossible," Wheeler scoffed. "The construction schedule can be adjusted," Sarah finished. She faced Wheeler fully. "I'll need a complete cost comparison. Restoration versus new construction. Environmental impact reports for both options. On my desk by Thursday." Wheeler clutched his portfolio tighter. "Ms. Chen, with all due respect, Thank you, Marcus. That will be all for now. The dismissal was clear. Wheeler hesitated, then gathered his renderings with sharp movements. I'll have those reports for you. But I strongly advise... Thursday, Sarah repeated firmly. After Wheeler left, the cabin seemed to exhale. Sarah's professional mask slipped slightly as she sank into one of the dust-covered chairs. Sorry about that, she said. Corporate politics. You've done well for yourself, Jack observed, trying to keep his tone neutral. Have I? She looked around the cabin, her expression softening. Sometimes I wonder what Dad would really think. He built this company on relationships, on understanding, the soul of a place. Marcus sees only profit margins and investment returns. Jack touched the carved heart above the fireplace. And what do you see? Sarah stood, moving to join him by the hearth. I see a girl who once thought she could change the world, who traded her dreams for different ones. She paused. And I see a boy who knew the value of things that can't be measured in dollars. Sarah, don't. She stepped back. Not yet. I have a board meeting in Portland tomorrow, but after... She pulled a business card from her jacket, wrote a number on the back. This is my private line. Call me in 2 days. We'll talk properly. Then she turned to leave, then stopped. The restoration specialist story. Consider it true. I'll have a contract drawn up. Whatever you decide about the rest, this place deserves a second chance. Jack watched her walk away, the business, card heavy in his hand. Through the window, he saw Wheeler waiting by a black SUV, his expression stormy. The cabin creaked softly, settling. Like it too was processing everything that had just happened. Like it too knew that the past and present were about to collide. In ways none of them could predict. Dark clouds gathered over the mountains as Jack worked on the cabin's porch, racing against the approaching storm. The old weather radio he'd found in a kitchen drawer crackled with static-filled warnings of a severe system moving in. Thunder rolled in the distance as he secured the last support beam. The porch was finally stable, though temporary bracing, still marked where future work needed to be done. The business card in his pocket seemed to burn with possibility. Tomorrow he could call Sarah. Tomorrow they could figure out what all this meant. The first fat drops of rain began to fall as he gathered his tools. He should head back to his trailer, but something made him hesitate. The storm felt like more than weather. It felt like an omen. Lightning split the sky, followed immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. The storm was directly overhead. Now, wind whipped through the trees as the rain turned torrential. Jack made a quick decision and unlocked the cabin door. Inside was dry, at least, if dusty. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the rooms in stark bursts. The old radio rasped out another warning. Severe thunderstorm, potential for flash, flooding. Residents advised to seek shelter. He clicked on his work light, setting it on a table to cast a warm glow through the main room. The storm's fury made the cabin creak and groan, but the solid construction held firm. A particularly strong gust rattled the windows. Jack moved to check them, making sure none were loose enough to break. As he passed the fireplace, he noticed something odd, a slight draft where there shouldn't be one. Kneeling by the hearth, he ran his hands along the stonework. There, a loose stone near the floor. When he wiggled it, something rustled behind it. The stone came free easily, revealing a small cavity. Inside was a packet of letters, tied with a faded blue ribbon. The top envelope was addressed in familiar handwriting. To Jack, if you're reading this, I hope you understand now. His hands trembled slightly as he untied the ribbon. The first letter was dated just after graduation. Dear Jack, I'm leaving for Stanford tomorrow. Mom says it's for the best, that a clean break will hurt less. But how can leaving you behind ever not hurt? I understand why you had to stay. Family is everything to you. It's one of the things I love most about you. But I'm scared that if I don't go now, I never will. And I'm even more scared that if I do go, I'll lose the best part of myself. I left something in our cabin. A piece of my heart carved in wood. Maybe someday you'll find it again. Love always, Sarah. Lightning flashed as Jack unfolded the second letter, dated 5 years later. Dear Jack, Dad brought me to a construction site today, my first real project with the company. All I could think about was how you would have appreciated the craftsmanship in the old building we're replacing. You'd see the history in the walls, the stories in the joints and beams. I see spreadsheets and profit margins now. When did I become this person? I drove by your dad's shop. It's a coffee chain now. I wanted to ask about you, but I was afraid of the answers. Still missing you. Sarah. More letters followed, tracking the years. Sarah's promotion to project manager. Her father's first heart attack. Her gradual rise through the company ranks. Each letter felt like a window into a life parallel to his own wandering path. The last letter was new, the paper still crisp. Dear Jack, 20 years. The cabin is mine now, all the land around it too. The board wants to tear it down, build something sleek and soulless. I tell myself it's progress, it's business, it's what Dad would want. But standing here, touching the heart you carved, I remember who I used to be, who we used to be. I'm leaving this here as a message in a bottle, cast into the sea of time. If you ever find your way back, know that some part of me has been waiting. All my love, Sarah. Thunder shook the cabin as Jack carefully folded the letters. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, something else was breaking. The careful walls he'd built around old memories, old dreams. The weather radio crackled again. A storm expected to continue through the night. Jack settled back against the hearth, letters in his lap, surrounded by the ghosts of words written but never sent, feelings preserved like insects in amber, waiting to be rediscovered. Sometimes, he reflected, you had to weather the storm to find your way home. Morning after the storm broke crystalline and clean, sunlight striking rainbow prisms through the remaining raindrops. Jack had spent the night in the cabin. The letters safely returned to their hiding place. He was brewing coffee on a camp stove when he heard the crunch of tires on wet gravel. Sarah's Audi looked out of place against the rustic backdrop, its metallic paint reflecting the forest like a mirror. She stepped out wearing hiking boots with her business attire, a small concession to the muddy conditions. A leather briefcase had replaced yesterday's portfolio. You stayed here last night, she said. It wasn't a question. Storm was too bad to drive back. Jack poured a second cup of coffee. Want some? She accepted the cup, their fingers brushing briefly. Black? 2 sugars. You remembered. Some things don't change. He watched her take in the improved porch. Some things do. Sarah set her briefcase. On the now stable stairs, I postponed my board meeting, told them I needed to personally oversee an assessment of the property. Is that what this is? She met his gaze steadily. I don't know what this is, Jack. 20 years is a long time. He nodded toward the cabin. Want the tour? Inside, Sarah moved through the rooms like a ghost returning home, touching furniture, running fingers along windowsills. Her designer clothes contrasted sharply with the dusty interior, yet somehow she belonged here more than in yesterday's corporate setting. Dad always said real estate was about potential, she mused. The art of seeing what could be, not just what is. Smart man. He asked about you, near the end. She turned to face him. Wanted to know if I'd heard from that Morrison boy who built things right. Jack's throat tightened. I didn't know he'd passed. Should have reached out. Should have, could have, would have. Sarah smiled sadly. We're both guilty of that. She opened her briefcase, withdrew a folder. Speaking of building things right, here's the contract. Standard restoration terms, good rate. Sarah. We should discuss the scope of work first, she pressed on. The Historical Commission will want documentation of any original features. I found the letters. She froze, color draining from her face. When? Last night, during the storm. He moved closer. Why did you keep writing them? Why did you keep wondering? She countered. All these years, never staying anywhere, never putting down roots. You know why. Sarah set the contract down, shoulders sagging. Because roots mean choices, commitments, the chance to fail the people who matter most. Like I failed you, like we failed each other. She touched the carved heart above the fireplace. I was so sure back then, about everything. Success meant getting out, moving up, becoming more. And now? Now I run a company that tears down history to build luxury condos. Her laugh held. No humor. The board thinks this place would make a perfect corporate retreat. Authentic rustic charm for executives tired of their corner offices. Jack studied her profile, seeing both the girl he'd known and the woman she'd become. What do you think? I think. She trailed off, moving to the window. I think I'm tired of being sure, of knowing the smart play, the right move, the bottom line. She turned back to him. Why did you really come back, Jack? I didn't know I was coming back, he said honestly. Not until I found that yearbook page, then the key, then the heart. Breadcrumbs, she murmured. I kept leaving them, never sure if... She shook her head. God, listen to us. We sound like teenagers. Maybe we need to. Maybe that's the point. Sarah picked up her coffee cup, now cold. I have a multi-million-dollar development project hanging on my decision about this place. Investors to answer to, a board watching my every move. And I keep thinking about that girl who dreamed of changing the world. She set the cup down with a decisive clink. The one who thought love was enough to build a future on. Jack stepped closer. What happened to her? She grew up, learned about reality. Sarah's voice softened. But standing here in this cabin with you, I'm not sure she learned the right lessons. Through the window, sunlight caught the morning mist rising from the forest floor. Like the land itself was breathing, awakening to new possibilities. Sarah squared her shoulders. The board meets next week. I need to decide. She picked up the contract. In the meantime, this place does need proper restoration, for whatever future it ends up having. Their fingers met over the paper, lingering longer. The necessary 20 years of carefully maintained distance collapsed into a single charged moment. Then Sarah's phone shattered the silence, its ringtone jarringly modern in the timeless space. The spell broke. She checked the screen and grimaced. Wheeler. Probably about those reports. She gathered her briefcase. I should go. At the door, she paused. Jack, whatever happens, I'm glad you found your way back. He watched her drive away, the contract unsigned in his hands. The cabin creaked softly, as if sighing at the complexity of human hearts. On the hearth, 2 coffee cups sat side by side. One old enamel, one expensive ceramic. Like the people who had drunk from them, they were mismatched, but somehow right together. Jack spent the next few days working methodically through the cabin's repairs, trying to lose himself in the rhythm of restoration. But every stroke of his plane, every carefully fitted joint, felt weighted with meaning. The original blueprint he'd found tucked behind a baseboard had become both guide and metaphor, a faded vision of what could be, marked with the amendments. Of time, he was removing rotted windowsills when he heard vehicles approaching. 2 this time, Sarah's Audi and Wheeler's black SUV. Their synchronized arrival suggested a confrontation brewing. Wheeler reached the cabin first, wielding a thick folder of documents. Morrison. Still here, I see. Still working, Jack replied, evenly setting down his tools. Sarah walked up more slowly, her expression guarded. Marcus insisted on presenting his findings in person. They gathered around the old dining table, its surface cleared of decades of dust. Wheeler spread out reports, surveys, and projections in neat rows. The numbers are clear, he began. Restoration costs would exceed new construction by 40%. Marketing studies show minimal interest in historical properties among our target demographic. The land alone is worth... I'm not sure you can put a price on history, Jack interrupted. Wheeler's smile was cold. Actually, that's exactly what we do. Ms. Chen, the investors can wait for my decision. Sarah cut in. She turned to Jack. "Walk me through what you found, professionally." Jack retrieved the blueprint, laying it over Wheeler's reports. "The original craftsmanship is exceptional. Preston built this place to last generations. The foundation is solid, the timber. Frame is sound. Even the original windows could be restored rather than replaced, at considerable expense," Wheeler noted. "Some things are worth the cost." Jack traced the blueprint's lines. "Look at these details. The way the roofline embraces the landscape, how the windows frame specific views. This wasn't just built, it was composed. Poetry doesn't pay dividends," Wheeler scoffed. But Sarah was studying the blueprint intently. "I remember this window seat. Used to spend hours there, watching the light change through the trees." Wheeler shifted uncomfortably. "Ms. Chen, about the board meeting tomorrow. Dad used to say every building tells a story," she continued, as if he hadn't spoken. "What story does your resort tell, Marcus?" "A story of progress, profit, the future, the future," Sarah repeated softly. She looked around the cabin. "And what happens to all the past stories? The memories, the hearts carved above fireplaces?" Wheeler's eyes narrowed. "This is business, not a romance novel. Your father understood that, did he?" Sarah's voice sharpened. "Because I remember him fighting to preserve the Carnegie Library downtown when developers wanted to tear it down. I remember him redesigning entire projects to save single old-growth trees." "Different times," Wheeler pressed. The market can wait." Sarah squared her shoulders. "I'm tabling the resort proposal." Wheeler stiffened. "The board won't accept." "The board appointed me CEO to make decisions, not just execute. The easy ones." She picked up his reports. "Thank you for your thoroughness, Marcus. That will be all." The dismissal was clear, but Wheeler hesitated. "Sarah, think about what you're risking. Your position, your father's legacy." "I am." She met his gaze steadily. "That's exactly what I'm thinking about." After Wheeler left, silence settled over the cabin. Sarah walked to the window seat, running her hand along the worn wood. "You know he'll go straight to the board," Jack said quietly, "probably already making the call." She turned to face him. "Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me this place is worth fighting for." Jack stepped closer, close enough to see the fear behind her professional mask. "What does your heart say?" "My heart?" She laughed shakily. "My heart's been hiding in these walls for 20 years, leaving letters no one was meant to find." "Sarah, I can't lose this company, Jack. It's all I have left of Dad. But if I let them tear down every place that matters, every story that shaped us." She gestured around the cabin. "What kind of legacy is that?" The blueprint lay on the table between them, its lines connecting past and present like veins in living wood. Outside, Wheeler's SUV started up, carrying away one vision of the future. "Maybe," Jack said carefully, "it's time to build something new, something that honors what was while creating what could be." Sarah touched the blueprint, her fingers finding the window seat where she'd once dreamed teenage dreams. "You always did know how to build things right." The cabin creaked gently, holding them in its temporary shelter. Tomorrow would bring board, meetings and business realities. But for now, in this space they'd rediscovered, possibility hung in the air like dust motes in sunlight. The next morning found them sharing coffee from a battered thermos, sitting on the newly repaired porch steps. Sarah had traded her business attire for jeans and work boots, a transformation that made her look both younger and more herself. "The board meets at 3, she said, watching steam rise from her cup. "I've been up since dawn, running numbers, trying to find a way to make this work. And I keep coming back to something Dad told me once. Numbers tell you if you can do something. Heart tells you if you should." She turned the thermos cup in her hands. "Tell me about the years between. Where did you go after your father's?" "The shop closed." Jack leaned back against the porch post. "Everywhere, nowhere. Started with small restoration jobs in Portland. Word got around that I did good work. Pretty soon I was getting calls from all over the Northwest, but never settling anywhere. Tried once. Bought a little place in Idaho. Thought I'd set up a proper shop." He smiled ruefully. "Sold it too. Years later, kept feeling like I was trying to build someone else's life." Sarah nodded. "I understand that better than you'd think. First 5 years at Stanford and business school, I was trying to be this perfect corporate creature. Power suits, strategic networking, all the right buzzwords. Sounds lonely. It is." She set down her cup. "When Dad got sick, I came back to help run things. Thought it would be temporary, but watching him work, the way he balanced growth with preservation, profit with community, it felt real in a way mergers and acquisitions never did." Jack studied her profile. "He'd be proud of you, you know." "Would he?" "Sometimes I feel like I've spent so long trying to prove myself to the board that I've forgotten what I'm actually trying to prove." They worked together through the morning, falling into an easy rhythm. Sarah proved she hadn't forgotten her way around tools. A childhood spent on construction sites had left its mark. "Remember old Bill Peterson?" she asked, helping Jack measure boards for the window trim. "Dad's master carpenter, the one who could eyeball a measurement to within a 16th of an inch. He's the one who taught me this." She demonstrated a trick for marking angles without a protractor. "Said women had a better eye for detail anyway." Jack grinned. "He told me the same thing when I messed up a crown molding cut. Should have had Sarah do it," he said. "That girl's got the touch." They traded stories as they worked. The paths, taken and not taken, the moments that had shaped them. Jack told her about the Victorian mansion in Seattle, where he'd spent 6 months restoring hand-carved balusters. Sarah described the time she'd halted a downtown development after discovering Depression-era murals in an old bank building. "The board thought I was crazy," she said, carefully fitting a piece of trim, "but we incorporated the murals into the new design. Now it's one of our most successful properties. Turns out people actually like buildings with souls." As noon approached, they broke for lunch on the porch, sharing a thermos of soup Sarah had brought. The domesticity of it felt both strange and familiar, like trying on an old favorite jacket and finding it still fit. "I used to imagine this," Sarah admitted quietly. "Us, working together, building things. We still could." The words slipped out before Jack could catch them. She glanced at her watch, a subtle reminder of the real world waiting. "The board meeting." "I know." They stood together, looking out at the forest. The trees had thinned some over 20 years, but the essential view remained unchanged. "Whatever happens today," Jack said, "this was worth it. Finding this place again. Finding us?" Sarah smiled softly. "Maybe that's what we're really restoring here." Her phone chimed, a reminder of the approaching meeting, reality intruding on their pocket of reclaimed time. "I have to go change," she said reluctantly. "Look professional for the firing squad." "Sarah." Jack caught her hand. "Whatever they decide, you did the right thing." She squeezed his fingers, then let go. "Keep working. Please, even if... just keep working." He watched her drive away, then turned back to the cabin. There was something comforting about losing himself in the careful craftsmanship, letting his hands remember what his heart had never forgotten. The thermos sat on the porch rail, holding memories of shared coffee and rediscovered connections. Sometimes, Jack reflected, the simplest vessels held the most precious things. Late afternoon sun slanted through the trees when Sarah's car returned. Jack knew something was wrong the moment she stepped out. Her professional armor was back in place, but cracks showed through. "That bad?" he asked. "Worse." She dropped a thick folder on the porch. "The development plans. Wheeler had them ready, all of them." Inside the folder, glossy renderings showed a modernist complex sprawling across the landscape. Glass-walled yoga studios, infinity pools, a helipad, all carefully positioned to maximize the valley views. The cabin site was marked as Phase 1 Welcome Center. "They want to start construction in 6 weeks, Sarah said. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she touched the drawings. Wheeler had everything lined up. Permits, contractors, marketing materials. Can they do that without your approval? They're calling an emergency shareholders meeting. Wheeler convinced 3 board members that my emotional attachment to the property is clouding my judgment. She laughed bitterly. 20 years of proving myself, and one old cabin undoes it all. Jack studied the plans. The design was impressive in its way, all clean lines and sustainable materials. Totally foreign to the forested valley. What happens if the shareholders vote against you? Best case? I'm politely asked to step down. Worst case? She gestured. At the plans. This happens anyway, just with someone else's name on the permits. The cabin creaked softly in the cooling air, as if listening. Unless, Jack said slowly. Sarah looked up. Unless we give them a better option. He spread out his own drawings, sketches he'd been working on between repairs. The cabin's just part of it. Look at the whole property. His plans showed the cabin restored, but not alone. Small, carefully placed cottages nestled into the landscape, connected by winding paths. Gardens, workshops, spaces that worked with the land rather than dominating it. A different kind of retreat, he explained. Not luxury spas and helicopters. Craftsmanship, history, teaching traditional skills, offering sanctuary from the modern world. The cabin becomes the heart of it, living proof that old things have value. Sarah traced the drawings with a finger. The board wants profit. Show them the numbers for authentic experience tourism. Show them how many people are desperate to disconnect, to work with their hands, to touch something real. It's not just about money for them, it's about image, prestige. So give them prestige. Not the hollow kind that comes from copying every other luxury resort. Real prestige. Uniqueness. A chance to preserve something genuine. Sarah paced the porch, her mind visibly working. We'd need detailed proposals, cost analyses, market research. I know people, craftsmen, artisans, teachers. A network built over 20 years of restoration work. Give me 48 hours. She stopped pacing. The shareholders meet on Friday. Then, we have 2 days to save your cabin. Our cabin, she corrected softly. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Jack reached for the development plans, but Sarah caught his hand. Before we do this, I need to know. If it works, if we save this place, what then? Are you staying? Or is this just another restoration project? The question he'd been avoiding. The same fear of commitment that had kept him moving for 20 years rose up, but something else rose with it. Something that felt like home. I've spent 2 decades running from roots, he said. Maybe it's time to grow some. Sarah's phone buzzed. Another message from Wheeler, no doubt. She ignored it. 2 days, she said, to save the cabin, the company, and maybe... She squeezed his hand. Maybe something else worth saving. They bent over the plans together as evening settled in. There was work to be done, a future to build. Sometimes, Jack reflected, the best foundations were laid in moments of crisis. Outside, an owl called, the first night sound of the gathering dusk. The cabin stood silent, waiting to see what would be written in its next chapter. They worked late into the night, the cabin illuminated by work lights and laptop screens. Sarah's corporate expertise merged with Jack's craft knowledge as they built their alternative proposal. Around midnight, she went to make more coffee and found an old photo album in the kitchen cabinet. Jack? Her voice drew him from his calculations. Look at this. The album's leather cover was cracked with age, its pages stiff. But the prom photo was perfectly preserved. Sarah in blue silk, Jack in a rented tuxedo with a matching tie she'd insisted on. They looked impossibly young, impossibly certain of their future. God, look at my hair, Sarah laughed, but her eyes were suspiciously bright. You were beautiful, Jack said softly. Ah, beautiful. She touched the photo gently. We had it all figured out, didn't we? You were going to take over your dad's shop, expand into custom furniture. I was going to law school, then joining Dad's company as legal counsel. We'd build a house right here, near the cabin. Life had other plans. Did it? Or did we just let go too easily? The question hung in the dusty air. Jack closed his laptop, sensing this conversation needed full attention. When Dad got sick, he said slowly, the shop was already struggling. Custom woodwork was being replaced by mass-produced furniture. People wanted cheap and fast, not handcrafted and lasting. You could have come to Stanford. We could have figured something out. With what money? The medical bills. He shook his head. And honestly, I was terrified of holding you back. You were destined for bigger things than a small-town carpenter's wife. Sarah set down the album with more force than necessary. Don't do that. Don't make my choices for me, even retroactively. Sorry, old habits. You know what I remember most about that night? She pointed to the prom photo. Not the dance, not the dress. I remember afterward, when we came up here to the cabin. You had this little notebook full of sketches, our future house, the furniture you'd build, even a workshop for me because you knew I loved making things too. The Sarah Chen Memorial. Woodshop? Jack smiled. With extra tall workbenches for your legs. You saw me, the real me, not just the overachiever's mask I wore at school. She met his eyes. When did you stop believing in that future? When did you? She stood, moving to the window. Outside, a nearly full moon silvered the trees. I didn't. Not really, I just buried it. Under degrees and promotions and proving. Myself to everyone except, she trailed off. Except me. She turned back to him. Do you know why I really fought Wheeler on this development? It wasn't just about the cabin. It was about choosing finally what kind of person I want to be, what kind of legacy I want to build. Jack crossed to her, drawn by the vulnerability in her voice. And what kind is that? The kind that honors the past while building the future. The kind that creates something lasting, something real. She gestured at their scattered plans. The kind that believes craftsmanship matters, that some things are worth preserving. Some feelings too. He hadn't meant to say it aloud. Sarah's breath caught. The moonlight painted her face in silver and shadow, reminding Jack of another night, another moment of almost courage. Why didn't you ever settle down? She asked. In all these years, why no roots? Because every place I went, every project I finished, none of them were home. He touched her cheek, feeling her lean into his hand. None of them were here. The prom photo lay forgotten on the table, but its echo surrounded them. Young love's certainty transformed by time into something deeper, more weathered, but ultimately stronger. Sarah's phone buzzed, breaking the spell. Another email from Wheeler, another corporate fire to fight, but this time she didn't pull away. We have work to do, she said, but her hand found his, a future to build. Together? She smiled, and in it he saw both the girl from the prom photo and the woman who'd found her way back to herself. Together. Morning found them surrounded by the detritus of an all-night planning session. Empty coffee cups, scattered papers, and 2 sets of keys lying side by side on the table. Sarah's sleek car key fob, next to Jack's worn brass truck key, seemed to embody their different paths. The numbers work, Sarah said, reviewing their proposal one last time. Traditional craft. Workshops, sustainable tourism, historic preservation grants. It's actually more profitable long-term than Wheeler's resort. But the board wants quick returns, prestige, a flashy project they can brag about at charity galas. She rubbed her temples. They're not going to like waiting 5 years for optimal returns, even if those returns are higher. Jack poured the last of the coffee into their cups, so we make them see beyond the numbers. How? By showing them what they're really buying. He spread out the property survey, not just land and buildings, stories, lives, a piece of history that can't be replicated with all the glass and steel in the world. Sarah's phone chimed. She glanced at it and grimaced. Wheeler's called an executive session before the shareholders' meeting. He's making his move early. Can he do that? He's got 3 board members in his pocket and enough proxy votes to enforce the issue. She stood, pacing the worn floorboards. I could fight it, call in favors, leverage my father's old connections, maybe win. But I'd be playing their game. using their rules. She stopped at the window, becoming exactly what I've been trying not to be. Jack watched her, seeing the weight of legacy and expectation on her shoulders. There's another option. She turned. What? Walk away. Let them have their corporation. Keep what matters. The company is what matters. It's all I have left of Dad, is it? Jack gestured around the cabin. Your father built things that lasted, created spaces for lives to unfold in. That's his real legacy. Not quarterly reports and shareholder values. Sarah picked up her key fob, rolling it between her fingers. 20 years building this career, my whole identity wrapped up in being Chen Development's CEO. Is that really who you are? She looked at him for a long moment. The girl in that prom photo, she knew who she was, what she wanted. And now, instead of answering, Sarah walked to the fireplace. The carved heart still waited above it, unchanged by decades of doubt and distance. She traced their initials with a finger. I found this cabin's original deed yesterday. Did you know it's still zoned residential, completely separate from the surrounding development parcels? Jack's pulse quickened. What are you saying? I'm saying, she took a deep breath. I'm saying maybe it's time to build something of our own, something real. Sarah, I have savings, investments outside the company, enough to restore this place properly, maybe develop it the way we talked about. Small scale, authentic. She turned to face him. If that's something you'd want. Jack crossed to her, taking her hands in his. Are you sure? Your career, my career, has been about building other people's dreams. Maybe it's time to build ours. She squeezed his hands. That is, if you're ready to stop wandering. He looked around the cabin, at the solid bones they'd uncovered. The good work started, the possibilities waiting to unfold. I think I finally found what I was wandering toward. Sarah's phone chimed again, another warning of corporate battles ahead. But this time, she lifted it deliberately and turned it off. I'll go to the executive session, she said. Tell them I'm stepping down. Wheeler can have the company. She smiled, and it held all the certainty of that long-ago prom photo combined with 20 years of hard-won wisdom. We'll keep the heart. Outside, early sunlight touched the trees, painting the world in possibilities. 2 sets of keys waited on the table. One representing the life they'd thought they should want, the other offering the chance to build something true. Sometimes, Jack reflected, the biggest choices came down to the simplest truths. Love over pride, authenticity over expectation, the chance to build something lasting over the safety of familiar walls. Sarah picked up her key fob one last time, then deliberately set it aside. Ready to start over? Jack reached for her hand. Ready to start right. The executive session went exactly as badly as Sarah had feared. She returned to the cabin in the late afternoon, her face set in hard lines. Jack knew something was wrong. Even before she slammed her car door. They're not just taking the company, she said without preamble. They're taking everything. A crash punctuated her words. She'd thrown something at the cabin wall, a rock. The window splintered, a spiderweb of cracks spreading across the antique glass. Sarah, the cabin's deed, the residential zoning, all of it. Her laugh was bitter. Turns out dear Marcus had been busy. Found some clause in Dad's original incorporation papers. Everything Dad owned when he started the company technically belongs to it, including this place. Jack felt the ground shift beneath his feet. That's not possible. Oh, it's possible. Legal just confirmed it. She paced the porch like a caged animal. 20 years I ran that company. 20 years of putting it first, of being the perfect corporate leader. And in the end, I'm just another asset to be managed. There has to be a way. To what? Fight them. With what? They've got teams of lawyers, shareholder support, and now... She gestured at the cabin. Now they have our future, too. The broken window caught the setting sun, scattering light like tears. We'll figure something out, Jack said. Find another place. Another place? Sarah whirled on him. "This isn't about a building, Jack. This is about everything we lost, everything we could have had if we'd just—" She stopped, breathing hard. "If we'd what? If we'd fought harder, if we'd trusted each other more, if you'd come to Stanford or I'd stayed here, or we'd just— Just what? Given up our principles? Let your father's business fail? Ignored your dreams?" Jack's own anger finally surfaced. "We were kids, Sarah. We did the best we could. Did we? Or did we just take the easy way out? Run away when things got hard?" She picked up another rock. "You're certainly good at that." The words hit harder than any stone. "That's not fair, isn't it? 20 years of wandering, never committing, never staying anywhere long enough to fail. At least I built something." "Built what?" "A corporate empire. That just stabbed you in the back? Real solid foundation there." As soon as the words left his mouth, he knew he'd gone too far. Sarah's face went white. "Get out! Sarah, get out!" She turned away, shoulders rigid. "Go do what you do best. Run away." Jack stood for a moment watching her back, seeing 20 years of pain and pride and missed chances crystallize into this broken moment. "You know what the difference is between running away and walking away?" he asked quietly. "Walking away means you know exactly what you're leaving behind." He gathered his tools slowly, methodically, giving her time to stop him. She didn't. The cabin creaked softly, as if sharing his pain. At his truck he paused for one last look. Sarah stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the interior darkness. For a moment he saw double. The teenage girl full of dreams overlaid with the woman, bearing the weight of lost chances. "For what it's worth," he said. "I never really left. Every house I restored, every piece I built, I was looking for my way back here, back to you." The broken window caught the last light of day, transforming the cracks into a web of gold. Sometimes, Jack thought, things had to break before they could be rebuilt properly. He drove away as darkness fell, the cabin disappearing into shadow behind him. But he didn't go far. Some things were worth waiting for, worth fighting for, and tomorrow they would both see more clearly. In the growing dark, the cabin stood patient and strong, its broken window like a wounded heart, waiting to be healed. Dawn found Jack sitting in his truck at the hardware store, watching the sun rise over the mountains. He hadn't slept. Instead, he'd spent the night doing what he did best, planning how to fix something broken. The stores. Bell chimed as he entered. Tom Mackenzie looked up from his morning paper, unsurprised, wondering when you'd show up, Tom said, already reaching for the antique glass case. 1930s wavy glass, right? For a broken window? Jack managed a tired smile. News travels fast. Small town. Tom selected a pane carefully. Sarah came by last night. Bought the same thing. Wouldn't take it when I told her you'd probably be in. Imvurit. Something tight in Jack's chest loosened slightly. She hadn't given up. "Tom," he said slowly, "tell me about her father." "After I left." Tom set the glass down, considering. James Chen was a complicated man, proud, stubborn, but he watched out for Sarah even when she thought she didn't need it. He pulled out an old folder. Maybe especially then. The folder contained property deeds, dozens of them, all signed. Over to Sarah personally, not the company, in the years before James Chen's death. Man knew corporations, Tom said quietly, knew how they could change people. He made sure his daughter would have choices. He smiled. Cabin's deed is in there too, real one, not whatever corporate paper they're waving around. Jack stared at the documents. Does Sarah know? Probably not. James asked me to hold these until the right time. Figure that's now. Tom handed him the folder. Better hurry. She was heading up there early. The morning mist was just burning off when Jack pulled up to the cabin. Sarah's car was there, and the sound of hammering led him around back. She was attempting to repair the broken window alone, cursing softly as the glazing compound refused to cooperate. A handmade rocking chair sat half-assembled nearby. She'd apparently been busy all night too. Your technique's a little off, he said quietly. Sarah stiffened but didn't turn. I don't need help. Never said you did. He set his glass pane beside hers. But maybe we could build something better together. Now she did turn, eyes red-rimmed but fierce. Why did you come back? Because some things are worth fighting for, even when they're broken. He held out the folder. Especially. Then she read through the deed slowly, realization dawning. Dad did this? All of this? Man knew about building lasting things. Jack gestured at the cabin. Like father. Like daughter. Sarah touched the cabin's deed with trembling fingers. All this time, I thought I had to prove myself to the board, live up to some corporate standard. She laughed shakily, when all along Dad was trying to tell me to build my own legacy. He knew who you really were, so do I. She looked at the 2 panes of glass, identical in their potential. I'm sorry. About what I said, I'm sorry too. You weren't wrong. I did run. But not from you, from the possibility of failing you. Again. We were so young, she said softly, trying to carry such grown-up burdens. And now? She picked up both pieces of glass. Now we know enough to build something that lasts. She handed him 1 pane. Together. They worked in comfortable silence, fitting the new glass, their hands remembering the rhythms of cooperation. The rocking chair slowly took shape between window repairs, Sarah's design, Jack's joinery techniques combining to create something uniquely theirs. By afternoon, the window was whole again, stronger for having been rebuilt. The chair sat complete. On the porch, its curved runners inviting rest and reflection. Think we got it right this time? Sarah asked, settling into the chair's embrace. Jack knelt beside her, taking her hand. I think we finally know what we're building. The cabin creaked, its approval as Sarah pulled him close. Outside, the repaired window caught the sun, no longer broken but transformed, its new glass melding with the old to create something beautiful and strong. The shareholders' meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. At 8:50, Sarah and Jack walked into Chen Development's gleaming headquarters, carrying a new business plan and 20 years of determination. Wheeler was holding court in the boardroom, his resort presentations arranged with military precision. His confident smile faltered when he saw them together. Sarah, we weren't expecting, obviously. She set down their proposal with a satisfying thud. But then there's a lot you weren't expecting. The board members filtered in, their expressions ranging from surprise to calculation at Sarah's presence. She waited until they were all seated before speaking. Before we begin, I want to thank Marcus for his thoroughness in researching company history. Her smile was razor-sharp. It inspired me to do some research of my own. She began distributing copies of her father's deeds. Wheeler's face darkened as he read. These are the original property documents, showing clear separate ownership of key parcels, including the Preston cabin. Sarah's voice carried 2 decades of earned authority. My father was very good at planning ahead. An older board member, Morrison, leaned forward. Even so, the resort proposal is exactly what every other development company is doing, Jack cut in. But Sarah has a different vision, something unique. Their new proposal made its way around the table. Artistic renderings showed the restored cabin as the centerpiece of a traditional craft center. Architectural plans detailed small, sustainable guest cottages nestled naturally into the landscape. Financial projections demonstrated a steady, growing return based on the booming market for authentic experiences. The Preston Center for Traditional Arts and Crafts, Sarah explained, where people can disconnect from the digital world and reconnect with something real, learn traditional skills, stay in historically accurate accommodations, experience true craftsmanship firsthand. It's a niche market, Wheeler objected. It's a growing market, Sarah corrected, one that aligns perfectly with both our company's history and its future. She touched the cabin's blueprint. My father built this company on understanding what people really need, not just what they think they want. Morrison studied the projections. These numbers are conservative, Sarah said, We already have interest from master craftsmen across the country. The educational tourism sector is exploding, and our location, combined with the Preston cabin's historical significance. The property does have a certain cachet, another board member admitted. Wheeler tried one last time. The resort plan is guaranteed revenue, tested market demographic. Why risk? Because that's what building something meaningful requires, Jack said quietly. Risk, vision, faith in what could be. Sarah met each board member's eyes. My father took risks, built things to last, created spaces that improved lives, not just portfolios. She straightened. I'm not asking for the board's approval. The cabin and surrounding parcels are mine. But I am offering the company first right of partnership. In this venture, Wheeler scoffed. Partnership with the Preston Center as a separate entity. Craft education, historical preservation, sustainable tourism, all while maintaining the Chen development standard of excellence. She smiled, just expressed in a different way. The board members exchanged looks. Harrison cleared his throat. And if we decline, then I step down as CEO, develop the center independently, and you lose access to a unique market opportunity. Sarah's voice softened. But I hope you'll see what I see. A chance to build something truly special. Silence fell as the board absorbed the options. Wheeler gathered his resort plans, his movements sharp with frustrated defeat. Finally, Harrison spoke. I knew your father, Sarah. He always said the best developments were the ones that grew naturally from the land and its history. He smiled. I think he'd approve of this vision. One by one, the other board members nodded. Wheeler's resort plans lay forgotten as they began discussing implementation details. Sarah felt Jack's hand find hers under the table. They'd done it. Found a way to honor the past while building the future. Together, the new business plan sat between them, its cover showing the restored cabin illuminated by morning sun. Above the image, the center's tagline captured their shared vision, building tomorrow's stories with yesterday's wisdom. 1 year later, the morning mist rolled away from the Preston Center grounds, revealing a transformation. Where once a single cabin stood alone in the forest, now a thoughtfully designed community had taken root. Small cottages, each unique but harmonious, dotted the landscape. Workshop buildings, their designs echoing the original cabin's craftsman style, hummed with activity. Jack stood on the restored porch, coffee in hand, watching the first light touch the new welcome mat at his feet. The mat was Sarah's touch, hand-woven by one of their resident artisans, its pattern incorporating both their initials. Inside, the cabin had become their home, its rooms carefully restored, but lived in, loved. The carved heart above the fireplace had been joined by new memories, photographs of the center's opening day, Sarah's framed resignation letter from her CEO position, now proudly displayed as her Declaration of Independence. Sketches for future expansions, the sound of tires. On gravel announced Sarah's return from her morning walk. She'd taken to exploring the property daily, always finding new possibilities in the land they now shared. The maple grove would be perfect for a wood-turning workshop, she called out as she climbed the steps. Natural light, enough space for 6 stations. Jack smiled. Already planning the next expansion? Someone has to. She kissed him, stealing a sip of his coffee. We're booked solid for the next 8 months. The waiting list for your timber framing course is ridiculous. People are hungry for this, he said. Real things, things they can touch, create, understand. As if to prove his point, the morning quiet was broken by the arrival of their first visitors. Cars began filling the neat gravel parking area, carrying people from all walks of life. Corporate executives trading suits for work aprons, retirees pursuing long-delayed dreams of craftsmanship, young people seeking connection to traditional skills. Tom Mackenzie's truck pulled in, loaded with supplies for the day's classes. He'd semi-retired from the hardware store, preferring to spend his days teaching traditional tool maintenance at the center. Now he waved as he unloaded, his weathered face bright with purpose. "Hard to believe it's only been a year," Sarah mused. Watching the morning routine unfold, students gathered on the workshop porches, instructors prepared their spaces, the smell of coffee and wood shavings filled the air. "Having second thoughts?" Jack asked. "Missing the corporate life?" Sarah touched the carved heart on the mantel, visible through the open door. "Not for a second. This—" She gestured at the thriving center. "This is what Dad meant about building something real, something that matters." The first-class bell rang, another of Sarah's touches, salvaged from her father's first development project. Its clear tone carried across the grounds, calling people to a day of creation and discovery. Speaking of building things that matter, Jack took her hand, leading her to the workshop he'd been using privately. Inside, a rocking chair stood, nearly complete, a mate to the one they'd built together during their reconciliation, but with subtle differences. Sarah's hands traced the curves, reading the story in the wood. "It's wider. Wide enough for two." Jack nodded. Plus, he guided her hand to a hidden detail carved under the arm, a small heart with a date 1 month in the future. Their wedding date. "You old romantic," she whispered, eyes bright. "Learned from the best. Your father knew. Sometimes you have. To trust that what you're building will last." Outside, the morning classes began. The sounds of work and learning rose on the morning air, soaring, planing, the murmur of instruction, the occasional laugh of discovery. Life, moving forward while honoring what came before. Sarah settled into the original rocking chair, pulling Jack down beside her. Tight fit, but they made it work. Below them, the center went about its daily ritual of renewal and creation. Above, in them, the carved heart that had started it all watched over its expanded family of new dreams and second chances. "We got it right this time," Sarah said softly. Jack squeezed her hand. "We built it right." The chair rocked gently as morning sunlight filled their home, touching everything with the glow of possibility. Sometimes the strongest foundations were built on old dreams, weathered by time but made stronger for the waiting. Through the open door, they could see the welcome mat with their interwoven initials. Not just letters now, but a symbol of two. Paths finally merged into one. The wandering carpenter had found his way home, and the corporate tycoon had found her true legacy. Together, they'd built something even Sarah's father might never have imagined. A place where old wisdom and new dreams could meet, where broken things could be made whole, where love itself could be restored. The morning bell rang again, calling them to the day ahead, but they lingered a moment longer, rocking together, writing the next chapter of their story in the language they knew best, the language of things built to last.